view of the frog at the bottom of the well. So obviously we know what the metaphor is about. It's about having limited view and our ignorance, which is also one of our 10 afflictions. So in the initial verse, is the view of wisdom, the Buddha's wisdom is deep and vast. There's nothing unknown to him, which means he knows everything in the universe, and that's how vast the wisdom is. So you just mentioned that it takes such a long time to go through kindergarten, primary education, and right through university and professional training, so on and so forth. And what yet we know what there is to know that we can study within a capability of the mind. It's less than a speck of dust that the Buddha knows. So then imagine that you wonder, how long does it take then? How many lifetimes does it take then to learn that vastness of the wisdom? Second, the virtue of grace. The Buddha's compassion is immense. He vows to deliver all. And that is the grace. The grace is to deliver all. The virtue of ending. The Buddha has ended, eliminated all afflictions. And that is the goal in our life. This is the purpose of our life. I want to eliminate all afflictions as much as we do, as much as we can in this life. But before we can do that, one has to understand and acknowledge that we have those afflictions. We don't even know what they are, that will be very difficult. So for the three virtues perfected, he is replete with blessings and wisdom, and that's what we should try to emulate. So it's the master's explanation. In our spiritual practice, what we must cultivate is virtue. How many kinds of virtue are there? Then we must perfect these three virtues. Obviously, there are innumerable virtues, and those who stay on Friday in the extended session would have known that quite in the past number of months, we have been working together to identify the diverse types of virtues and afflictions and try to understand them. And we have identified quite a number. So I must say that all this culminates into three virtues. First virtue is that of obviously the wisdom, is vast and deep and vast. Second virtue is that of grace. So what is this compassionate grace that the Buddha had? Is that obviously has been cultivating life after life, and it continually transforms sentient beings. And that's why when, as a bodhisattva before attaining Buddhahood, the Buddha has returned to the shore of samsara to deliver sentient beings, lifetime after lifetime. But then they say that in the time of when he attained supreme enlightenment of Buddhahood, there are three types of people wherever he went, and to the various villages that he go. The people who had the affinity to see him and transform by the Buddha, and these are the ones that who go in there, go to the Buddha, meet the Buddha, listen to the Dharma, and some of them will also take up discipleship. But some had heard that the Buddha had come to the place, but they were not interested. These are the ones that had some affinity, but didn't choose and not interested in listening to the Dharma. Now, the third category, others had never heard of him, so did not see the Buddha. So even that's why sometimes when you understand this particular paragraph, even when the Buddha is there during that same lifetime, but one doesn't have the affinity to encounter the Buddha, or even though he's in the same place that one lives in, will not see and hear to the Buddha. So the Buddha transformed those he could. But those who didn't have, he carefully prepared causes and conditions for those who cannot be transformed and hopefully plant the seeds. So that reminds me, and as the paragraph reminds me, of my neighbor. I used to share, try to share at least once a week with my neighbors, and that was something over the past few years. And obviously, the sharing was not consistent. But sometimes, whenever there's session, some of the neighbors would come over to my house, and I would share with them. So I just heard that last night, one of them just passed away due to long illness of cancer. But I just really hope that the seed of Dharma has been planted on her, and hopefully then she could seek the path of Dharma and then take a higher rebirth. So the third virtue is that of ending on liberation. For your information, you just live down my road. So the third virtue is that of ending on liberation. So over countless lifetime, the Buddha had followed Buddhas and been transformed by them. So he faithfully accepted and practiced every Buddha's teachings. He continued to end afflictions life after life. So the ending of this affliction, why is it important for us to end this affliction? Is because when the more afflictions that we end, the more layers of encrustation we remove from our heart and from our mind. That when we do so, we can see clearer and clearer. Otherwise, it will just as much as we practice, it will just be a glimpse. So you just imagine the nature of true suchness cannot emerge. And what you see is only a small little hole like a frog in a well. So the lessons learned is that the Buddha came to this world to help everyone understand we must do all good deeds and refrain from evil. And these were two very simple lines: do all good deeds to refrain from evil. And I think people find very hard. So if there are three, if you like, you can look at it as three precepts or three practices that the Buddha actually originally wanted to teach. It's basically stop doing evil, do only good, purify the minds. But even with these three simple teachings, that are simple, but try to reflect on this just three simple lines. And it's very hard to do. And people find it hard to do. So then what the Buddha then did was, because it's so difficult for people even to practice, stop doing evil, do good deeds, and purify the mind. The Buddha then gave the 5 precepts for lay people to practice. So why the 5 precepts? The 5 precepts are easy to practice. It's just only to do good deeds and refrain from evil and purify the mind. And the 5 precepts, it's at least does not prevent the rebirth in the lower realms. And hopefully then as the seed grows life after life, that we can then practice and cultivate the Dharma, and then eventually take on these 3 practices. So there are countless afflictions accumulated over many lifetimes. These pile up like excrement, like garbage, and I often refer them as incrustation in us. Life after life, we had the causes and conditions to contemplate carefully and eliminate afflictions. So despite lifetimes of cultivation, they were not replete with 3 virtues. They thought they were satisfied. They thought they had already attained enough. And that is the thing about spiritual progress. And our spiritual progress put us in the state of mind that we've done it. So in the same way, if someone has already attained a doctorate degree, doesn't mean that I know it all. So it's for this reason that I was told Brother Robert that please don't refer me to as Dr. Chin, because I realized that I know nothing. And more, in fact, I'm trying to understand nothing. And this is what my life goal is. So actually, this is like the famous frog in the bottom of the well that Master says. He thinks he knows, but he's unable to open the mind. So therefore, for us to open the mind, we have to drop our appearances and our labels and our titles that we may have. It's only when one humbles oneself that the mind can go down to ground to listen. So we sentient beings are like this. We think we are satisfied with such more understanding or awakening, but yet there is a lot much more to learn. So in engaging in spiritual practice, layman reflections, cultivate wisdom and virtue of grace and a virtue of ending. So in today's contemplation, a relatively short one is when you open the door to your mind, you will see how you are filled with love. Now, the mind, when it first open, it's hard to open the mind to the door of learning. And I'm sure you have counted many people who, well, when I first encountered them, oh, it's okay, it's fine. I know, I because they regard as a religion as intruding into their life. So the best way is just open the door of the mind to feel with love, to understand humanity. And then, only then the door to the wisdom is through the door of the great loving heart. So first of all, if the mind can just open a heart to actually accept what giving is about, to ignite this great loving heart in us, then with that great loving heart, we can cultivate the virtues. It's from the virtues that the wisdom mind can grow. So with the abundance of love, you can resonate with the wisdom mind of the Buddha. Why the abundance of love? That's because the abundance of love that once opened us for us to let go. With abundance of love, we will stop hurting anybody. So we stop doing evil. In the abundance of love, we can do only good. Then with the wisdom mind, we can purify the mind. So to have, obviously, when we cultivate lifetime out of lifetime, we must be in a non-retreating progress. And masters have said in the past, we do not want to walk 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And this non-retreating progress is still in the bodhicitta mind. So what is the bodhicitta mind? The mind that is filled with compassion and wisdom. So the path shows us the way to the perfection of virtues and wisdom. So the path that we walk through is the way of the Buddha, through the perfection of virtues and wisdom. So on relationship, guiding relationship, the Bodhisattva path is to grow in perfection of virtues, to evolve the blossoming of wisdom. And that's what this path is about. And for us to cultivate all these virtues. And then as we do, we will grow in wisdom. Just as much as you conquer yourself, guide others to conquer their own afflictions. And to part of cultivation, it become a spiritual warrior. But who are we conquering? The one that you need to conquer is conquer yourself. We need to conquer ourselves. And that is the biggest, if you like, that's the biggest enemy you have to fight. And because when you do, that's when you grow in wisdom. And that's when you grow in wisdom, then they'll be able to have this guiding relationship with others so that you can also guide others along through your own experiential learning. So many do not realize they are holding on to the pillars of samsaric delusion in life. Well, it's easy to say that, oh, this is samsara, I wouldn't cling on to it. But reflect upon us. By clinging to our thoughts alone, that is already clinging to the pillars of samsaric delusion. It's not necessarily clinging on to all your own possession or your wealth. And if then remember the 3 practices to purify the mind, the fact that we cling on to our self-centered opinion, that is already clinging on the pillars of samsaric delusion. So we need to understand even our own subtle thoughts, and these are all the slight delusion that we hold on to. So they need to realize the ignorance and have the courage to let go and divert the efforts of their strength to hold on to the aspirational pillar of truth by evolving in virtues and wisdom. So this aspirational pillar of truth It's what we want to have, in our aspirational vows. And the pillar of truth is the truth of the Dharma. That has to be, cannot be really easily understood. So the way to understand the Dharma is one have to practice to realize what the truth is. Okay, God and brothers and sisters, that's all. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant sharing, Brother Chin. Yeah, and it's so much for guidance. It's wonderful contemplation. Yeah, and so much